Hello, my friend. Welcome to your sleep story. My name is Stephen Dalton. I'm an Irish storyteller, and it's my great privilege to be the voice that you listen to as you go to sleep tonight. There is a place in Ireland called Newgrange. It is a place that I visited as a child many times on school trips and with family. I even brought my wife Rebecca there on one of our first dates, and it is a magical place because every year on the winter solstice, the ancient chamber of that place is filled with morning sunlight. This story is inspired by the man who found Newgrange back in the 1960s, Michael J. O'Kelly. He found a place that was built before the pyramids of Giza and that demonstrate deep human intelligence. I really hope you like it, and if you'd like to support my work, you can do so on Patreon. The link is below this video. Okay, let's do the relaxation session now, which will take a few minutes before tonight's sleep story. I'm going to count down from 10 to 1, and as I do, allow yourself to let go more and more. 10. Feel the support of the bed beneath you, or the floor, or whatever surface you lie upon tonight. And beneath all of that, feel the support of the earth, our home. From the earth we receive a constant support. And as you become aware of that feeling of being supported, see if you can let go a little more now. Releasing tension, letting go. A little more now. 9. Feel into your body. Where are you still holding? Where do you feel tension? Maybe you feel pain. Maybe it's in your feet, in your lower legs. In your thighs, in your belly, in your chest, maybe you're like me and you hold a lot of tension in your hands or in your face. See if you can let that tension go now. Just by becoming aware of it, we can ease the tension. 8. You are safe. Allow my voice to be an anchor of safety tonight, to be a friend. Know that my voice will only ever take you to safe places, and allow that fact, that feeling of trust, to enable you to let go a little more now. 7. The day is done. Whatever has been, has been. Whatever will be, will be. Whatever thoughts you might be having, know them for what they are, just thoughts. Don't judge them, positively or negatively. Know that they are not you. They are a symptom of being a human. And as they arrive, see them, but there's no need to follow them. Watch them go, floating away like leaves on a moonlit river, or clouds passing through a starlit sky. 6. This is your moment. This is your time. You deserve rest. We all do. So as you move deeper and deeper towards deep rest tonight, know this: you deserve this rest as much as anyone else. 5. Peace lives within you. It is always there. It is a constant friend. A constant presence. It's just waiting to be found, waiting to be felt. See where you can find your peace tonight. 4. Perhaps allow a little gratitude now. Gratitude for the simple things, for this moment of peace, for the shelter you have tonight, for the breath in your body. 3. Begin to engage with your imagination now. Begin to see a rainy morning in Ireland. Green fields stretch as far as the eye can see, the type of green that you only get in Ireland, and be ready to venture deep into Ireland's past. 2. Checking in with your body one more time now. Your body has worked hard for you today. It's time to give it rest. And 1. Completely letting go now, as I tell you tonight's sleep story. It rained the day we began. Not heavily, just enough to keep a shine on the spades and darken the soil as we turned it over. I remember how the sound of it on the canvas of the tent. It started before dawn, soft and constant, and how it followed us down into the valley like a presence, like something that had been waiting there longer than we had. I had been to Newgrange before, of course. I had stood at the edge of the mound in the dry months, notebook in hand, tracing the outer curve with my eyes, trying to picture the line of the passage beneath it. But it was only when the rain came that it began to feel like something real, as if the earth had softened just enough to let us in. We weren't many, just myself, 3 students from the university, and a local lad named Kearney, who had grown up 2 miles from here, and said he'd always known there was something strange about the place. The others were cheerful enough, asking questions, laughing at the cold. I didn't say much. I've never liked to fill the silence of a place like that. There's something about old ground. You have to meet it with quiet. The first few hours were just turf, sodden, heavy stuff. We worked slowly, stopping now and then to empty the muck from our boots. But then, just before midday, Kearney struck stone. Not the kind that comes up rough with the earth, but shaped, cut by hand long ago. He stood back and looked at me, the rain dripping from the peak of his cap, and for a long moment, neither of us said a word. It was a threshold, and we both knew it. By late afternoon, we had cleared enough to reveal the faint beginning of a passage, sloping slightly inward, the sides curved and tight, the air around it cold in a way that didn't feel like the weather. I ran my fingers along the inside wall, the stone damp but smooth beneath the grime, and felt something, just for a second. Not knowledge, not exactly, not even intuition, more like a presence, as if the place was aware of being touched for the first time in many centuries. And somewhere behind it, beyond what we could yet see, there was a quiet I could not name, a quiet that felt held in reserve, like something waiting for its moment. We worked for weeks before we saw the full curve of the chamber. It came slowly, stone by stone, as if the place were revealing itself only when it felt ready. We brought in a small lamp, battery-powered, and fixed it on the end of a pole, lowering it in gently. That first time, I remember holding my breath. The walls inside weren't blank. They were marked. Lines and swirls and spirals, some faint, some bold. I sketched them carefully in my notebook, tracing over them later in ink when the others were asleep. I didn't know what they meant, and I still don't. Not truly. But I remember feeling, even then, that they were made with purpose. Not just decoration. Something more deliberate. A language, maybe. Though not one we've kept. There was a shape to the passage, narrow, but not haphazard. It ran inward with a strange precision, as though the builders had something specific in mind. I didn't say that aloud. It would have sounded fanciful. But still, when I lay awake in the small cottage we rented just up the hill, I found myself staring at the ceiling and thinking about direction, about line and light. There was something there. I could feel it, but I didn't yet know how to name it. That winter we stopped digging. The cold had hardened the ground again, and Kearney's mother took sick. He never came back after that, though I heard he went on to work in forestry somewhere near Sligo. The students moved on too, as they always do. One of them sent me a postcard from Florence the next spring, with a sketch of the Duomo on the front. She said she missed the silence of the mound. But I stayed, not always digging. There were long months when the budget dried up and I was back in Cork lecturing, filling out forms. But I returned as often as I could. The place had caught me. Not in a way of obsession, exactly. More like belonging. As if some quiet part of me had always been facing in the direction of this hill, waiting to arrive. When you're digging, you start with your hands, That's the truth of it. Before the tools, before the measurements, it's the hands that learn the shape of the place. I came to trust mine more than I trusted my own mind. The fingers would find what the eyes missed. A change in pressure. A faint shift in temperature. A smoothness beneath the soil that spoke of intention. Worked stone, polished long ago by hands not so different from mine. There is a sound to digging, not just one, but a whole set of them, and after a while you come to know them like you'd know the voices of friends, the scratch of trowel on shale, the soft suck of clay pulling at your boots, the brittle snap of a root giving way. And in the quiet between those sounds, the slow exhale of the land itself, as if it were letting go of something it had held for centuries. I worked lying down half the time, stretched out with my face close to the ground, the damp air rising into my nostrils. And there's a humility in that position. You stop thinking of yourself as separate from the earth. You become part of the floor, part of the slope, part of the quiet. Some days I'd stay like that for hours, inching forward on my elbows, brushing away tiny crumbs of soil with a soft bristled brush until a carved edge emerged. Spirals, triangles, or once what looked like the ribs of a sunburst. I didn't name them. I just recorded them and moved on. It's not fast work. It shouldn't be. You learn patience in the soil and discipline. The kind of discipline that comes from doing the same motion 1,000 times. Not for speed, but for precision. I kept a logbook, of course. Measurements, sketches, elevation markers. But none of that captured the thing itself. Not the feel of it. Not the smell of it. The smell of wet limestone, or the way your breath misted in the low chamber. Not the way you could sometimes hear water shifting deep below the stones, like an old voice trying to speak. By the third season, I knew the passage better than I knew the hallway of my own flat. I could move through it in the dark by memory alone. I would crouch in the narrow corridor, one hand resting on the stone to steady myself, and I'd feel the faint swell in the floor where the central chamber began. We hadn't cleared it all yet, not even close, but the shape of it was beginning to reveal itself. It wasn't linear. It bent. It curved toward something. I remember one afternoon, rain heavy on the tent outside, the air inside the mound cool and still. I'd been tracing the outline of a stone basin, deep set in the chamber wall. It was smooth, more so than the others, and shallow enough that light might catch in it, if light were ever to come. I sat back on my heels and just stared at it. Who put you here? What hands shaped you? Whose eyes have seen you millennia ago? And then I moved on. Time passed, and then something started to happen. It started with a feeling more than a fact. That was the strange thing. There was no cry of discovery, no moment of revelation. Just something I noticed one December morning when I came down to check the covers we'd placed over the chamber mouth. The weather had turned. The river was full, and the wind came in sideways, carrying rain that hit the side of the mound in a low hiss. I remember my coat was soaked through before I'd crossed the field. Inside, the air was thick and quiet. I moved carefully, flashlight in hand, ducking beneath the wooden supports we'd installed the season before. It was darker than usual. The sky outside was low and dull, and I thought I'd only be inside for a moment, just to check for leaks, maybe brush away the worst of the damp. But something stopped me just past the first bend. There was light, not from me. I'd switched off my torch already, but real light, thin and gold, and stretching faintly along the floor of the passage. A narrow band of it, like a blade drawn along the earth. I stood perfectly still, thinking I must have left something open behind me. I hadn't. I waited. The beam didn't move quickly, but it moved. It reached forward into the passage, like it was looking for something. And then it faded. Gone in a minute, maybe less. And that was all. I didn't mention it that day. It didn't feel right to speak of it. Not because I was afraid, but because I couldn't explain it, and I didn't want to ruin it with language. I just noted the date, December 19th. It meant nothing to me at the time, but I underlined it in the margin of the logbook. I went back every morning after that, before sunrise, sitting just inside the entrance, with my coat pulled tight, listening to the wind and the far-off sound of cattle moving against the fences. On the 20th, the same thing. Light, faint and sharp, low against the ground. More certain now. The same on the 21st, though it reached further. I stayed in the chamber that morning, longer than I meant to. Didn't eat. Didn't speak to the others when I saw them later. I was trying to hold the shape of it in my head. This thing I didn't understand, but had seen with my own eyes. There was something at work here. Something crafted, I began to think about the line of the passage, the shape of the hill, the angle of the entrance. Not guesses, not magic, just facts, quietly arranged by people who had known what they were doing. I didn't call it alignment yet. I didn't know that word in that context. I just wrote it in my notebook. There is a reason that light comes here. They made it so. I told the department I needed to be on site again for winter maintenance. That wasn't untrue. We always did a bit of clearing before the freeze. But that wasn't the reason I returned. I came because something had stayed with me all year. That beam of light, those mornings in the passage, the way the ground seemed to hold its breath while it happened. I'd thought of it in the summer, while lecturing on Bronze Age tools to students who barely looked up from their notebooks. I'd thought of it in shops, in queues, while shaving. It was a quiet obsession, the best kind. I arrived in the valley 3 days before the solstice. No fanfare, no audience, just myself and a bag of provisions. Kearney's cousin still kept the keys to the gate, and he didn't ask questions when I told him I'd need them for a few days. He handed them over, like he was giving me the keys to a chapel. That first morning, I entered the mound in darkness. No torch. I let my hands guide me. I knew every bend by then, every dip in the floor. I sat in the chamber and waited, my back resting against the far stone. Cold came up through my coat, but I didn't move. Outside, I could hear the valley waking, wind across the grass, the distant clatter of a tractor starting. Then silence. And then the light. It came slow, like before, a ribbon, faint at first, then more certain. But this time I watched how it moved. It didn't fill the space. It never did. But it reached very precisely to the back of the chamber. It touched the stone basin there, the one I'd cleared with my own hands, and it rested on it, just for a moment. A line of gold on the coldest stone in Ireland. I exhaled, not knowing I'd been holding my breath. It faded as before, quietly, without drama, and when it was gone, I sat a while longer, long enough to let the weight of it settle into me. When I stepped outside, the sun was fully up, and the air was thick with mist. I walked to the edge of the mound slowly, tracing it with my fingertips. They had done this on purpose. I was certain now. Still, I told no one. Not yet. You must understand, this wasn't a time of headlines or documentaries. There was no internet, no audience waiting to be amazed. We were just men in boots, with notebooks and wet socks. If I was going to say something, it had to be true. It had to be measured. And I had to be sure. So I returned the next year, and the year after, and each time I sat alone, listening to the silence before the light came in, and each time it came. It was the year I turned 60 that I invited someone else to see it. Not a crowd, just one. A young lad from the department. Quiet, clever, not in a hurry. He'd asked me once about Newgrange in passing, and I remember the way he spoke of the stones, not just as data. He'd said they looked as though they remembered something. I told him to come on the 21st. I didn't say why. I just said, be early, before sunrise, and bring a flask. He arrived with muddy boots and wide eyes, and I led him down the path without speaking. The wind was sharp that morning. The sky was clear. I remember thinking, good, let it show him everything. Inside, I stepped back. I let him crouch near the basin. I didn't explain what was coming. I just waited. And then, as it had so many times before, the light returned. I heard his breath catch. That was all. He didn't speak. He just watched, the gold blade of it stretching over the stone, touching the edge of the carved spiral, like it had done for millennia, and then fading. When it was gone, he turned to me and said nothing, just nodded once. He understood. That was enough. Later that year, we made measurements. We took readings. We mapped the angle of the sun and the axis of the passage. I stood at the top of the hill with a notebook, while he called out figures from below. We confirmed what I had long suspected. The mound was aligned to the winter solstice sunrise, precisely, deliberately. A calendar written in stone, built before the pyramids of Giza, set in the earth with nothing but hands and knowledge and sky. Eventually, it was published. Others came. Articles were written. Photographs taken. And the place began to change. Not in itself. The mound remained the same, but in how the world looked at it. People spoke of wonder, of mystery, of ancient genius, and they were right in their way. But none of it felt quite like those silent years when I sat alone in the dark waited. I went one last time the winter I retired. There was no reason to. The papers had all been written. The site was managed now, carefully kept, with a small car park and a path laid down to keep tourists from trampling the wild grass. There were visitor hours and laminated guides. The solstice was by ticket now. Cameras, lists. But I still had a key, and no one stopped me. It was early, mid-December, the kind of morning when frost clings to the edge of your coat and your breath drifts like smoke. I walked the old way, through the low field, past the blackthorn hedge, boots crunching in the frozen soil. There was no one else, only the sheep, scattered and slow, heads down in the white grass. Inside, the passage welcomed me like it always had. It felt like an old friend now. I didn't bring a torch. I didn't need one. My hand found every turn. My knees knew where to rest. I sat in the chamber without hurry. The light came just as it always had. Thinner now, maybe. Or maybe I had simply forgotten how delicate it could be. It reached in and touched the same old stone. And for a moment, the chamber glowed from within, like the breath of the world itself had entered to warm it. I watched it without thinking. When it faded, I placed my hand on the floor. It was dry, cold, familiar. I stayed like that for a while, long enough for the light to be gone completely, long enough to feel the quiet return. Then I stood. My bones ached more than they used to, but I felt no burden. At the entrance, I paused, looking back just once, not to remember it, but to let it remember me. Then I stepped out into the morning as the rain began to fall and closed the gate behind me.